Hello. In this video we're going to talk a little bit about molds, embedments, and the types of different jewelry that you can use for epoxy jewelry. Probably a lot of you have seen these types of molds, the plastic molds that are made from a sheet. Very inexpensive, but they are limited to kind of generic shapes. You know, you can get your squares and circles and teardrops and things like that in them. They're a little harder to demold than our silicone molds, but they're a lot less expensive, and they don't have quite the same life as our silicone molds. And of course, the next type is a silicone mold. And what these molds are is they're made out of silicone rubber, and they're very flexible. And because of that, it's really easy. Once you have a piece molded in there, you just pop it and it comes right out. You can have a great variety of shapes in these molds, and you're really not limited to size. I mean, I've made these molds up to 6-7 inches in diameter, one piece, you know, for, of the finished product. And it's more expensive to do these, but I think that this is, for most people, this is a better choice if you're going to do a lot of jewelry of the same type. Okay, now some of the advantages and disadvantages of the molds. Like I said, the plastic molds are a little harder to use because even though the jewelry won't really stick to it really well, because they're not as flexible as these, it's a little harder to pop out, and sometimes you can accidentally crease the mold, the plastic itself, when you're trying to pop it out, and if you do that, the mold, that particular cavity in the mold, is no good anymore. But again, they are cheap. These are, you know, $3 to $5 for a sheet with all these different shapes. The silicone molds, as I mentioned, you can have them with many different shapes. And the nice thing is if you really get into this, you can actually make your own. Let's say you have a favorite brooch or piece of jewelry or anything that you really like. You can make a silicone mold of it and make more. Now, we're going to talk about other types of jewelry, because these all require you to make the epoxy piece first and then glue it on to another piece to make a piece of jewelry, or to drill a hole through it and put a ring through it to make a piece of jewelry. But we also have our ready-made jewelry pieces like this that you can put a piece of tape on the back and actually fill it with epoxy. If there's any holes, like these particular ones have holes already in them for the strings, you do have to cover those up as well and then re-drill them out later. Other things are, a lot of people are doing bottle caps now, where you literally take a bottle cap and you put a picture or objects inside the bottle cap and then fill it up with epoxy. And then of course we have these little embedment pieces, charms, things like that. And here's one. I'm going to try to get a real close-up of this. I don't know if it's going to work or not. That one's already been filled, and it's a charm ready to go. Come out really nice. And when you pour molds like this, what you get out is a finished product kind of like this. This one was an embedment. Now, I don't claim to be an artist in epoxy jewelry. I know about the mechanics of it, but I'm not a real artist, so I'm not the most creative person with the process. I just know the good supplies and how to physically use them. And here's another piece, and we've got a few creative ones down here. This one I kind of like myself, a little blue hand, and that came out of a silicone mold, by the way. And then I'm kind of an electronics guy, so I did one here with some LEDs and diodes and stuff inside of it with a little bit of glitter in it. Here's one with some lettering inside of it. And anyway, the embedments that you can put in these is pretty much only limited to your imagination. You do have to learn a few things about the embedments. These are some letters, little letters like I used in that last one. These are some just colorful beads, tiny, tiny beads. And these are some of the little googly eyes that you can put in there. And I'm learning myself as I go along, such as I found out that these googly eyes float. So it's a little hard to put them in to a mold because they want to float up to the surface, plus they want to turn over so that the front of the mold would be the back of the eye. So something like this, you may have to pour in two parts. Pour a little layer, glue this in where you want it with a clear glue, and then pour the next layer. And you know, you can use pretty much any glue that's clear, even Elmer's glue or something like Mod Podge, things like that. Other things that you can add into the epoxy are flakes of metal. These are actually made for automotive paint, so they're very fine. These are finer than the ones that you get in the craft stores, but it's just I happen to have those, so I use them. And of course, you can get the regular metal flake glitter kind of stuff that you get in the stores. And colorant. You can get translucent colorants like these that make translucent color pieces. In other words, like this little hand I had here, you can actually see through it. See, light will travel through it. Or you can add opaque colorants or opaque pigments behind it like a white, and then add the colorant to that. Now if you want to put pictures in these, there are a couple of precautions you need to take. If your picture is an actual photograph, you can pretty much just cut it out and put it in. But if it's from an inkjet printer, it needs to be sealed because the resin will soak into the paper and will dissolve the ink. So one of the things people use is Mod Podge, and it's very important that you seal the entire print multiple times, because even a pinhole in it will allow the epoxy into the print. So what you do is you take this and you brush it on 2 or 3 coats, cut your picture out, coat the edges again, and then you can use this as a glue too, if you're going to glue it into a piece of jewelry, like these little charms or the bottle caps. You can use that to glue it in the actual cap and then fill it with epoxy. But it is very important that you get multiple coats of that on there. And this has been just a quick go over of the different types of molds, different kinds of embedments, and different types of jewelry that you can make with epoxy resin.